The crystal towers of Velthar Prime shook as another explosion echoed across the night sky. Chancellor Mylan Vorthes pressed her pale hands against the window of her office and watched the stars burn. Each flash of light meant another ship was dying. Each death meant the enemy was getting closer. "How many more systems have we lost?" she asked without turning around. General Hanul Kim stood behind her, holding a data tablet with shaking hands. His people had never been soldiers. They built art, not weapons. They wrote poetry, not battle plans. 3 more fell yesterday. The Korthak are moving faster than we thought possible. Mylan closed her eyes. The Korthak horde was like a disease spreading across the galaxy. They came in massive fleets of ugly ships, killed everyone they found, and moved on to the next world. No one could stop them. No one even tried anymore. "The council meeting starts in 10 minutes, Hanul said quietly. "This is our last chance." Mylan nodded and walked to her desk. On it sat a small hologram projector that would connect her to the most powerful beings in the galaxy. She had practiced her speech 100 times, but the words still felt hollow. In her mouth, the projector activated, and suddenly she was standing in a virtual chamber filled with alien forms. The Zephyrians looked like tall, graceful birds with silver feathers. The Nexari were blob-like creatures that spoke through musical tones. The proud Alterians appeared as beings of pure light, too important to show their real bodies. "Friends of the galaxy," Mylan began, her voice carrying across space to a dozen different worlds. "I come before you not as Chancellor of the Veltharian Empire, but as someone begging for the lives of 12 billion innocent people." The alien representatives listened in silence as she described the horror. The Korthak had already destroyed 17 star systems. They took no prisoners, they made no deals. They simply killed everything in their path and moved on. "We have tried to fight them," Mylan continued, her voice breaking slightly. "Our defense fleets lasted 3 hours. Our best weapons barely scratched their ships. We are not warriors. We never learned how to kill because we never thought we would need to." She paused and looked at each alien face in turn. "I am asking for military aid. Ships, weapons, soldiers, anything you can spare. If we fall, the Korthak will not stop. They will come for all of us eventually." The first to respond was High, Scholar Zenth of the Zephyrians. His voice was like wind through crystal chimes. "Chancellor Vorthes, we feel great sadness for your situation. However, the Zephyrian people took a sacred oath 10,000 years ago to never again participate in warfare. We cannot break this vow even for such a noble cause." Trademaster Quellen of the Nexari was next. His blob-like form pulsed different colors as he spoke in musical notes that the translator converted to words. "The Nexari Consortium maintains strict neutrality in all conflicts. War is bad for business, you understand. We cannot risk our trade relationships by choosing sides." One by one, each species gave their reasons for not helping. The Alterians spoke about dangerous precedents. The Corvan Republic mentioned budget concerns. The Thessian Alliance cited administrative complications. Each rejection felt like a knife in Mylan's heart. She had known this would be difficult, but she had hoped that at least one species would remember what it meant to help others in need. Soon, only one hologram remained active. The image was fuzzy and filled with static, coming from somewhere far away. A human face appeared on the screen, scarred, tired, but very much alive. "I am Captain Taemin Park of the Terran Colonial Defense Force," the man said in a voice rough from years of shouting orders over gunfire. "We received your message." Mylan stared at the human. She had heard stories about Earth's children, but most species preferred not to talk about them. Humans were different from everyone else in the galaxy. They came from a world that tried to kill them every day, so they learned to kill back. "Captain Park," she said carefully, "the Korthak horde has over 2,000 ships. They have weapons that can crack planets. They have already destroyed 17 star systems. Are you saying that humanity will help us?" The human's scarred face showed no emotion. "Our fleet will arrive in your system in 48 hours. We will bring 47 ships and approximately 8,000 personnel." Mylan felt her hope rising and falling at the same time. Captain, I appreciate your willingness to help, but 47 ships against 2,000. It seems impossible. For the first time, the human smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. Chancellor, you asked for help fighting monsters. The civilized galaxy sent you polite refusals. We're not civilized and we're not polite, but we are very good at fighting monsters. The transmission ended, leaving Mylan alone with General Kim and 1,000 questions. What do we know about humans? She asked. Kim activated his data tablet and began reading. They come from a planet called Earth. It's a death world. Extreme weather, dangerous animals, natural disasters, diseases that kill millions. Most species would have died out, but humans adapted. He scrolled through more information. They've been fighting wars for their entire recorded history. Wars over land, water, food, religion, politics, and sometimes just because they were bored. They've survived ice ages, plagues, nuclear wars, and the colonization of worlds that would kill most other species in hours. Mylan sat down heavily in her chair. Are they monsters themselves? No, Kim said slowly. That's what makes them dangerous. They're not evil. They just understand something the rest of us forgot. That sometimes good people have to do terrible things to protect innocent lives. Over the next 2 days, the Veltharian leadership prepared for humanity's arrival. They cleared docking bays, prepared quarters, and tried to imagine what 47 human ships could possibly do against the Korthak horde. When the human fleet finally dropped out of hyperspace, it was nothing like what they expected. The ships were all different sizes and shapes. Some looked like military vessels covered in weapons. Others appeared to be converted cargo haulers or mining ships. All of them showed signs of heavy use, scorch marks, patched hull plates, mismatched components. The largest ship, Soul's Vengeance, requested permission to dock. Within an hour, Captain Park and his senior staff were walking through the corridors of the Veltharian command station. The culture shock was immediate. Where the Veltharians saw beautiful architecture and artistic expression, the humans saw strategic weaknesses and tactical problems. Admiral Sujin Lee, a stern woman with gray hair and cold eyes, examined the defensive systems with professional skepticism. Your weapons platforms are positioned for visual impact, not military effectiveness, she told General Kim bluntly. They're beautiful, but they're useless. Colonel Ji Woo Choi, a young man with quick eyes and nervous energy, studied the Korthak intelligence reports with growing concern. They use swarm tactics, he said to no one in particular. Overwhelming numbers, acceptable losses, no concern for individual ship survival. It works against civilized opponents who value every life. Captain Park stood in the center of the command room, looking at the tactical displays with the calm expression of someone who had seen it all before. How long until the Korthak main fleet arrives? He asked. 6 days, General Kim replied. Park nodded. That gives us enough time to prepare. We'll need to modify your evacuation procedures, upgrade your defensive positions, and reprogram your fleet's combat protocols. Captain, Mylan said hesitantly, our people have never fought a real war. We don't know how to kill. Park looked at her with those tired, scarred eyes. That's good, Chancellor. It means you're still human inside, even if you're not actually human. Don't worry, we know how to kill. We've been doing it for so long that we've forgotten how to... Stop, he turned to address the entire room. The Korthak are coming whether we're ready or not. Your choice is simple. Let us do what we do best, or watch your species become extinct. We didn't come here to be heroes. We came here because someone had to, and everyone else was too civilized to get their hands dirty. As the human officers spread out to begin their preparations, Mylan realized that her people's salvation would come at a price she was only beginning to understand. The humans weren't just going to fight the Korthak. They were going to become something even more terrifying than their enemies. And somehow that thought both terrified and comforted her at the same time. The human command center looked nothing like the rest of the Veltharian station. Within 6 hours of their arrival, Captain Park's team had stripped away the beautiful decorations and replaced them with screens, maps, and weapon displays. The elegant curves of Veltharian architecture were now covered with straight lines and sharp angles. Major Kyung-ho Han spread a large star chart across the main table. Red marks showed where the Korthak had already attacked. Yellow marks showed Veltharian colonies that were still safe. The pattern was clear and terrifying. "They're not random," Han explained to the gathered Veltharian leaders. "The Korthak are following trade routes and supply lines. They know exactly where to hit to cause the most damage." Chancellor Vorthes studied the map with growing horror. "These yellow marks, these are our civilian colonies. Millions of families live there." Sergeant Yunsu Yang, a small woman with hard eyes, looked up from her computer. 12,400,000,000 people across 15 worlds. The Korthak have killed 43 billion in their current campaign. Simple math says you cannot win a normal fight. The words hit the room like cold water. General Kim stepped forward, his face pale. "There must be another way. We could negotiate, or perhaps evacuate everyone to safer systems." Captain Park shook his head. "General, the Korthak don't negotiate. They kill everything they find, and you don't have enough ships to evacuate 12 billion people before they arrive." Admiral Lee activated a holographic display showing the enemy fleet. Thousands of ugly, brutal ships filled the space above the table. "The Korthak outnumber us 50 to 1. Their ships are crude but effective. Their crews don't care if they die as long as they kill someone first." Chancellor Vorthes felt sick looking at the display. "So we're doomed? You came here just to watch us die?" "No," Colonel Choi said quietly. "We came here to make sure the Korthak die instead. But you're not going to like how we do it." The human strategy was unlike anything the Veltharians had ever imagined. Colonel Choi explained it with the calm voice of someone discussing the weather, but his words made everyone in the room step backward. "We sacrifice the outer colonies to draw their main fleet into a trap. We use your evacuation ships as bait to make them think you're running away. We hit them with weapons that haven't been used in civilized space for 300 years. General," Kim's hands were shaking, "you're talking about abandoning millions of people. You're asking us to become murderers." Lieutenant Commander Borasong was the youngest human officer in the room. She had short black hair and scars on her neck from some old battle. When she spoke, her voice was soft, but her words were hard as steel. "No, General. We're asking you to let us be the murderers so you don't have to. That's what humans do. We carry the weight so others can stay clean." The room fell silent. Outside the windows, Velthar Prime's twin moons were rising, painting everything in silver light. It should have been beautiful, but now it just reminded everyone how much they had to lose. Captain Park walked to the main display and pointed at the outer colonies. "The Korthak will hit these 3 systems first. We can't save everyone, but we can save most of them. The question is whether you trust us to do what needs to be done." Chancellor Vorthes closed her eyes. When she opened them again, she looked older. "What do you need from us?" The next 3 days were the hardest in Veltharian history. Human engineering teams swarmed over their ships, installing new weapons and removing safety systems. Captain Nam Woo Yoon supervised the work with quiet efficiency. "Your weapons are designed to disable enemy ships, not destroy them," Yoon explained to a group of Veltharian technicians. "That's good thinking when you're fighting reasonable people. The Korthak are not reasonable people. The humans installed kinetic cannons that could punch holes through solid metal. They added missile launchers loaded with nuclear warheads. They removed the computer systems that prevented targeting civilian areas. Chief Warrant Officer Min-Soo Park worked on the defensive upgrades. He was a big man with gentle hands who spoke softly to the Veltharian workers. But the weapons he installed were not gentle at all. "These point defense systems will shoot at anything that moves," he warned. "Don't fly too close to your own ships. Once we activate them, they can't tell the difference between friends and enemies when they're in combat mode." As the humans worked, they told stories that made the Veltharians understand why the galaxy feared them. Master Sergeant Hee-Jin Chung described the Terran corporate wars, when human companies fought each other with private armies over mining rights. "We learned that rules only work when both sides follow them," she said while cleaning a rifle that looked like it could punch through a battleship's hull. "When one side breaks the rules, the other side has to break them harder, or everyone dies." Commander Seung Woo Hong told them about the Martian Rebellion, when human colonists fought their own government for independence. The rebels had families, children, everything to live for. But they knew that sometimes you have to risk everything you love to protect it. The humans didn't enjoy talking about war. They spoke about death and killing the way other people talked about their jobs. Something they had to do, not something they wanted to do. Lieutenant Colonel So-Young Park sat with Chancellor Vorthes during a break in the preparations. They watched human soldiers teaching Veltharian security forces how to use the new weapons. "We don't fight because we love violence," Park said quietly. "We fight because we're good at it, and someone has to be. Every peaceful species in this galaxy gets to keep their hands clean because we're willing to dirty ours." "But how do you live with yourselves?" Vorthes asked. "How do you sleep at night knowing what you've done?" Park was quiet for a long moment. "We remember why we do it. Your children will grow up in a universe where they never have to make the choices we make every day. That's worth any price we pay." On the fourth day, the Korthak advance fleet reached Velthar 7, the outermost colony. The attack began exactly as the humans had predicted. Hundreds of ugly ships dropped out of hyperspace and immediately started bombing the planet. The Veltharian evacuation fleet was waiting, protected by human escort ships. Lieutenant Min Hee-an commanded the escort squadron, 12 small fast ships designed to protect the larger transports. The battle was chaos. Korthak fighters swarmed around the evacuation ships like angry insects. The human escorts moved between them and the transports, their weapons cutting bright lines through space. One Korthak cruiser broke through the defensive line and targeted a transport carrying 3,000 civilians. Lieutenant An saw what was happening and made a choice that saved those 3,000 lives and ended her own. Her ship accelerated straight at the Korthak cruiser. The collision destroyed both vessels in a nuclear fireball that lit up half the system. The evacuation fleet escaped safely, but the Veltharians were horrified by what they had witnessed. "She didn't have to do that," General Kim said, watching the replay of the battle. "There might have been another way." Captain Park nodded. Yes, she had other choices. She could have tried to disable their engines or attempted to jam their targeting systems or called for backup. All of those choices would have taken time we didn't have, and those 3,000 civilians would be dead right now. He turned to face the Veltharian leaders. "Lieutenant An chose to trade her life for 3,000 others. That's what humans do in war. We make the hard choices so you don't have to live with them." The evacuation of Velthar 7 was successful. 28,000 people were saved. But the cost was higher than the Veltharians had imagined. They began to understand that their salvation would require them to watch good people die for strangers. As the reports came in from the outer colonies, Chancellor Vorthes realized that this was only the beginning. The real battle was still 5 days away, and the humans were preparing something that would either save her people or damn them all. "Are we doing the right thing?" she asked Captain Park as they watched the tactical displays update with new enemy positions. Park looked at her with those tired, scarred eyes. "Chancellor, there is no right thing in war. There's only the thing that lets more good people survive than bad people. We're going to do things that will give you nightmares for the rest of your life. But your people will have the rest of their lives to have those nightmares." The Korthak main fleet was 4 days away, and the humans were just getting started. The asteroid field between Velthar 4 and Velthar 5 looked empty to anyone watching from far away. Floating rocks drifted slowly through space, just like they had for millions of years. But hidden among those rocks were 47 human ships, waiting like hunters in the dark. Admiral Lee sat in the command chair of the Incheon's Fury, watching her screens with calm eyes. Around her, the bridge crew worked quietly, checking weapons and preparing for battle. Everyone knew what was coming. "Korthak main fleet dropping out of hyperspace in 30 seconds, reported Lieutenant Jae-Sung Kim from his sensor station. On the main screen, the Veltharian evacuation fleet was running away from the advancing enemy, their ships looking helpless and afraid. It was exactly what the humans wanted the Korthak to see. The enemy fleet appeared like a swarm of angry metal insects. 2,000 ships of different sizes, all painted in dark colors and covered with weapons. They moved forward in a loose formation, confident from their easy victories. "They're taking the bait," whispered Commander Jae-hoon Lim, following the evacuation fleet right into the kill zone. The Korthak ships passed through the asteroid field, chasing what they thought were frightened civilians. Their sensors were focused ahead, looking for weak prey. They never thought to scan the rocks around them. Admiral Lee waited until the enemy fleet was exactly where she wanted them. Then she spoke one word into her headset. Now. 47 human ships came alive. At once. They had been floating dark and cold, looking like pieces of space junk. Now their engines blazed to life and their weapons powered up. The trap was sprung. The first Korthak ships to die never knew what hit them. Human missiles streaked out from hidden positions, guided by computers that calculated death with perfect precision. Nuclear explosions lit up the darkness as dozens of enemy vessels simply disappeared. But the humans weren't trying to destroy the entire Korthak fleet. That would have been impossible. Instead, they were doing something much smarter and much more cruel. Colonel Dongwoo Kang led the fighter squadrons in surgical strikes against specific targets. His pilots didn't try to blow up the enemy ships. Instead, they hit engines, weapons, and communication systems. They wanted survivors. "Disable, don't destroy," Kang ordered over the radio. "We need them alive to carry the message." The Korthak fleet was confused and angry. They had expected to chase down helpless refugees, not fight a real battle. Their commanders shouted orders in their harsh language, trying to organize a counterattack. A group of Korthak cruisers broke away from the main fleet and tried to attack the human fighters. They moved fast and fired everything they had, but the human pilots were ready for them. Captain Sun Ho-yu commanded one of the fighter wings. He had been flying combat missions since he was 19 years old, and he knew how to use an enemy's anger against them. "Let them chase us into the rocks," he told his pilots. "Use the asteroids as cover. Make them work for every shot." The Korthak fighters followed the humans deeper into the asteroid field, where the big rocks made it hard to maneuver. The human pilots used their smaller, faster ships to dart between the asteroids while the enemy struggled to keep up. One by one, the Korthak fighters were picked off by human weapons. But Yu wasn't satisfied with just winning the fight. He wanted to send a message. "Attention, Korthak vessels." He broadcast on their own communication frequency, speaking their language with perfect pronunciation. "You came here to hunt civilians. Instead, you found us. Consider this a lesson about the difference." Meanwhile, the real horror was happening on the larger ships. Several Korthak cruisers had tried to board human vessels, thinking they could take them in close combat. They were very wrong. Sergeant Major Hyo-jung Kim and her Marines were waiting for them. The humans had turned their own ships into death traps. Every corridor was a killing ground, every room was an ambush point. The Korthak warriors were big, strong, and vicious. They had conquered dozens of worlds and never met an enemy they couldn't defeat in hand-to-hand combat. But the humans didn't fight fair. Kim's Marines used the ship's artificial gravity as a weapon, crushing Korthak boarding parties against the walls. They flooded sections with poison gas, then fought the survivors while wearing breathing masks. They turned off the lights and used night vision equipment to hunt enemies in the dark. "We don't fight to prove we're tough," Kim explained to her soldiers as they prepared for the next wave of boarders. "We fight to win. Use every advantage you have. Make them afraid to come back." The surviving Korthak who made it back to their ships told stories that spread through the enemy fleet like a disease. The humans fought like demons, they said. They showed no mercy because they expected none. They turned every battle into a nightmare. But the worst part of the human attack wasn't the violence. It was the psychology behind it. The humans wanted the Korthak to be afraid, and they knew exactly how to create that fear. Captain Taemin Park himself led a boarding action against a Korthak command ship. His team fought their way to the bridge and captured the enemy commander alive. Instead of killing him, Park did something that terrified the Korthak more than death. He made the commander watch as human ships systematically destroyed his fleet. He forced him to see his warriors die one by one, unable to help them. Then Park gave him a message to take back to the Korthak leaders. "Your people have a choice," Park said calmly, while explosions lit up the space outside. "Leave the system now, or we will make your warriors beg for the mercy you never showed others." The captured commander was released in an escape pod, along with recordings of the battle. The humans wanted the rest of the Korthak to see what happened when they fought real soldiers instead of helpless civilians. On Velthar Prime, the civilian population watched the battle through long-range sensors. They saw the human ships moving like deadly dancers through space, turning the Korthak fleet into burning wreckage. Chancellor Vorthes stood in the command center, watching the tactical display with mixed feelings. The humans were winning, but the cost was enormous. Every victory came with a body count that would devastate any civilized military. "How many Korthak have died?" she asked General Kim. Kim checked his reports with shaking hands. "Approximately 30,000 so far. The humans have lost 4 ships and about 200 people." Vorthes felt sick. 30,000 lives ended in a few hours. She knew they were enemies, knew they would have killed every Veltharian they found. But watching so much death happen so quickly was overwhelming. Commander Yejin Seo noticed. Her reaction. SEO was a quiet woman who usually worked on logistics, but today she was coordinating strike missions that killed thousands of beings at a time. "Chancellor," Seo said gently, "I know this is hard to watch, but remember what the alternative would be. If we hadn't fought back, 12 billion of your people would be dead by now." The battle raged for 6 hours. When it was over, the Korthak fleet was broken. Half their ships were destroyed and most of the survivors were damaged. But more importantly, their confidence was shattered. The Korthak had built their empire on the fear they created in others. They were used to fighting enemies who were afraid of them. The humans were different. The humans were more frightening than they were. As the enemy fleet limped away from the asteroid field, Admiral Lee received a priority message from her long-range scouts. The news was both good and terrible. "Admiral," reported Lieutenant Bo Young, "Han, long-range sensors are detecting a massive object approaching from the outer system. It matches the description of a Korthak planet-killer weapon." Lee nodded grimly. She had been expecting this. The Korthak were desperate now, and desperate enemies did desperate things. "How long until it reaches Velthar Prime?" she asked. 18 hours, ma'am." The planet killer was a massive construction, the size of a small moon. It could crack a world's crust and boil its oceans, ending all life in a matter of hours. It was the Korthak's ultimate weapon, used only when they wanted to make sure nothing survived. Lee looked around the bridge at her tired crew. They had just won a great victory, but the real test was still coming. The Korthak were going to try to destroy Velthar Prime itself, and the only way to stop them was for humans to do something even more terrible than what they had already done. "Send a message to all ships," Lee ordered. "We're going to stop that planet killer no matter what it costs. Prep the ram ships for immediate launch." Captain Park received the message on his damaged ship and smiled grimly. He had known this moment would come eventually. Sometimes, to save innocent lives, good people had to make the ultimate sacrifice. He walked to the ship's communication system and sent a message back to Admiral Lee. It contained only 4 words, but they carried the weight of human history. "We'll get it done." The final battle was about to begin, and everyone knew that not all of them would see tomorrow. But 12 billion Veltharian civilians would wake up safe in their beds, and that was worth any price the humans had to pay. The planet killer looked like a dark moon made of metal and hate. It was 300 kilometers across, covered with massive engines and weapons that could destroy entire worlds. As it moved toward Velthar Prime, its shadow fell across the hopes of 12 billion people. Captain Hyunwoo Go stood on the bridge of his ship, the Busan's last stand, and watched the monster approach. His vessel was small compared to the planet killer, but it carried something that made it the most dangerous ship in the system, a fusion reactor set to overload. Distance to target? Go asked his navigation officer. 200,000 kilometers and closing. Lieutenant Min-ji Lee reported. The planet killer's shields are at maximum power. Their point defense systems are active. Go nodded and activated the ship-wide communication system. Attention, crew. We all knew this day would come. We all knew what we signed up for when we put on these uniforms. Today we save a world full of people who will never know our names. Around him, 13 other volunteers prepared their own ramships. Each vessel was a converted freighter packed with explosives and piloted by humans who had already said goodbye to their families. They called themselves the Final Squadron. Admiral Lee watched from the Incheon's fury as the ramships accelerated toward their target. Her face showed no emotion, but her hands gripped the arms of her command chair tightly enough to leave marks. "Ma'am," her communications officer said quietly. "Captain Go is requesting permission to begin the attack run." "Permission granted," Lee replied. Tell him that humanity will remember." The final squadron spread out as they approached the planet killer. The massive weapons defensive systems came alive, filling space with laser beams and missile fire. The first ramship exploded before it got within 50,000 kilometers of its target. Captain Go watched his friends die one by one as they flew into the storm of defensive fire. Each explosion meant another human life ended, another family that would never see their loved one again. But each death also meant the planet killer's defenses were focused on fewer remaining targets. "Sir," Lieutenant Lee said as explosions bloomed around them, "I'm reading massive energy buildup in the planet killer's main weapon. They're preparing to fire on Velthar Prime." Go looked at the tactical display. The planet killer was still too far away for a successful ramming attack, but it was close enough to destroy the Veltharian homeworld. He had to make a choice. Sacrifice his mission to save the planet now, or wait for a better shot and risk letting 12 billion people die. It wasn't really a choice at all. "All power to engines," Go ordered. "Take us straight at their main weapon array. We're going to stop them from firing." The Busan's last stand screamed through space toward the planet killer, dodging defensive fire that could vaporize a city. Go's crew worked at their stations with the calm efficiency of people who had accepted death and chosen to make it count. The fusion reactor began its final overload sequence as they closed the distance. In 60 seconds, it would explode with the force of a small star. The question was whether they could get close enough to damage the planet killer's main weapon before that happened. 30 seconds. The ship's hull began to glow from the heat of atmospheric entry through the planet killer's defensive screens. 20 seconds. Lieutenant Lee reported that their target's main weapon was almost ready to fire. One shot would crack Velthar Prime like an egg. 10 seconds. Captain Go could see the individual weapon ports on the planet killer's surface, so close now that he could almost touch them. 5 seconds. "It's been an honor serving with you all," Go said to his crew. 0. The explosion lit up half the star system. The Busan's last stand and its crew vanished in a ball of nuclear fire that could be seen from Velthar Prime's surface. But their sacrifice worked. The planet killer's main weapon array was destroyed, along with a significant portion of its hull. The massive construct shuddered and began to list to one side, its remaining engines struggling to keep it stable. More importantly, it could no longer threaten the planet below, but the battle wasn't over. The surviving Korthak fleet, desperate and enraged by their losses, launched one final attack on Velthar Prime itself. 300 damaged ships descended toward the planet's atmosphere, intending to crash into the surface and kill as many civilians as possible. The human fleet rose to meet them. Admiral Lee led the charge in her crippled flagship, followed by every ship that could still fly. They met the Korthak above Velthar Prime's largest city, where 10 million Veltharians watched the battle from their windows. It was the ugliest fight of the war. Ships exploded and crashed, raining debris on the planet below. The humans fought, with everything they had left, using damaged weapons and failing systems to stop an enemy that no longer cared about survival. Major General Sarang Jiang piloted her fighter through the chaos, her engines coughing, and her weapons nearly empty. She had been flying combat missions for 20 years, but she had never seen anything like this, an entire enemy fleet willing to die just to hurt innocent people. "All units concentrate fire on the largest Korthak ships," she ordered over the radio. "Don't let them reach the surface." One by one, the human pilots threw themselves at the descending enemy vessels. Some succeeded in destroying their targets. Others died trying. All of them knew that every Korthak ship that reached the ground would kill thousands of civilians. The battle ended when the last Korthak vessel crashed into an empty field outside the city, its crew dead at their controls. The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of burning metal falling like rain. 3 months later, the victory celebration felt more like a funeral. The human fleet had lost 60% of its ships and thousands of its best people. The survivors gathered in orbit around Velthar Prime for a memorial service that lasted 3 days. Each name was read aloud, not just the officers and pilots, but every technician, medic, and support crew member who had died so that strangers might live. Captain Hyun Woo-go and his crew were remembered first, their sacrifice saving an entire world. Chancellor Vorthes delivered a speech praising human courage and thanking them for their sacrifice. But when Captain Park responded, his words were simple and honest. "We didn't come here to be heroes. We came here because someone had to, and everyone else was too civilized to do what was necessary." The Galactic Council sent official thanks and promises of future cooperation, but they also quietly passed new laws designed to keep the dangerous humans away from civilized space. Trade agreements were modified, travel restrictions were imposed, and subtle barriers were erected. The other species returned to their comfortable belief that war was an aberration, that reasonable beings could always find peaceful solutions. They chose to forget that their peace existed only because humans were willing to fight their wars for them. Admiral Lee met with representatives from several alien governments who complained about human methods. "Your tactics were excessive," one diplomat said. Surely a more civilized approach would have achieved the same results. Lee looked at the alien with tired eyes. "You're welcome to test that theory the next time your worlds are threatened. We'll be here when you realize that monsters don't respond to polite requests." As the human fleet prepared to leave Veltharian space, individual friendships had formed between the two species. These quiet conversations revealed the true cost of humanity's role as the galaxy's protectors. Lieutenant Colonel So Young Park spoke with a Veltharian engineer who had worked alongside human crews. "We don't fight because we enjoy violence," she explained. "We fight because we're good at it, and someone has to be. Every peaceful species in this galaxy gets to keep their moral purity because we're willing to stain our souls." The Veltharians offered to help rebuild the human fleet, to share their advanced technology as payment for their salvation. The humans accepted the materials but refused the absolution. They understood that what they had done was necessary, not righteous. Captain Park made his final log entry as the human fleet departed Veltharian space. His words would be remembered long after the last human ship disappeared into hyperspace. The galaxy is full of species that evolved past their capacity for war. They built civilizations based on the idea that reason and morality would protect them from chaos. They're wrong, but they're also precious. Their innocence is worth preserving, even if it means we must remain forever tainted. We are not the galaxy's heroes. We are its immune system, ugly, violent, and absolutely necessary. When the next threat comes, the civilized species will debate and delay, and ultimately do nothing. Then they'll remember that somewhere in the dark between stars, the survivors of 1,000 wars are waiting. We'll answer that call, as we always do. Not because we want to, but because no one else will. 5 years later, new threats emerged from the galactic rim. The distress signals began broadcasting across civilized space, carrying the same desperate plea that had brought humanity to Velthar. On Earth, Admiral Park reviewed the threat reports and asked his staff the same question he always asked. "Do we answer?" The response was always the same. Someone had to stand between civilization and chaos. Someone had to make the hard choices that others couldn't live with. Someone had to